They said they loved you. They made you feel like the center of their universe. And then, without warning, they tore you apart. Empty words, broken promises. Here's the disturbing truth that psychology reveals. Narcissists are fundamentally incapable of love. Not unwilling. Not choosing not to. Physically, psychologically incapable. Their brains are wired differently. Their emotional development stopped at a critical stage. And that charming person who swept you off your feet, they weren't loving you. They were consuming you. As the renowned psychiatrist Otto Kernberg observed, the narcissist's apparent self-sufficiency is really a profound dependency on the admiration of others. Today, we're going to dissect exactly why narcissists cannot form genuine emotional bonds. We'll explore the childhood wounds that created this void, the defense mechanisms that protect it, and the devastating pattern they repeat with every person who gets close. If you've ever loved a narcissist, been raised by one, or suspect you might be dealing with one right now, this video will change how you understand them forever. And more importantly, it might finally help you stop blaming yourself. The empty core. Picture a house with beautiful architecture, stunning facade, perfect landscaping. But when you walk inside, there's nothing. No furniture, no warmth, no life. Just hollow rooms echoing with emptiness. Void. This is the internal world of a narcissist. Psychologists call it the narcissistic void, a profound emptiness at the core of their being where a stable sense of self should exist. But how does this happen? Research by developmental psychologist Heinz Kohut revealed that healthy self-esteem develops when children receive what he called mirroring. When parents reflect back the child's worth, validate their feelings, and help them develop a coherent sense of who they are. But narcissists never received adequate mirroring. Instead, they experienced one of two extremes, either crushing criticism that told them they were worthless or excessive praise that was conditional on performance. Neither gave them what they actually needed, unconditional acceptance of who they really are. So they developed a false self, a mask, a performance designed to extract the validation they desperately need from the outside world. The mask hides an emptiness that terrifies them. And love, real love, requires showing someone your authentic self. But narcissists don't have access to their authentic self anymore. That part was buried long ago, replaced by a character they play. This brings us to something even more disturbing about how they experience relationships. Supply, not love. Here's where it gets dark. When a narcissist says, "I love you," what they actually mean is something completely different. They mean, "I need what you give me." Psychologists call it narcissistic supply, the attention, admiration, validation, and emotional energy that narcissists extract from others to fill their endless void. Attention, admiration, validation, supply. Think about what love actually is. It's caring about another person's well-being, wanting them to grow, celebrating their successes, being there during their failures. Now think about how the narcissist in your life behaved. Did they support your growth, or did they feel threatened when you succeeded? Did they celebrate your achievements, or did they find ways to minimize them? Did they comfort you when you struggled, or did they become irritated that you weren't meeting their needs? The researcher Craig Malkin found that narcissists view relationships as transactional. You exist to provide something they need. When you stop providing it, when you're sick, stressed, or simply having a bad day, you become useless to them. As psychoanalyst Elan Galam wrote, "The narcissist does not love you. They love what you can do for them." This is why the relationship felt so confusing. Sometimes they seemed so in love, other times completely cold. It wasn't love fluctuating. It was your usefulness fluctuating. But what they do at the beginning of relationships reveals an even more calculated pattern. Love bombing trap. Remember the beginning, when they made you feel like the most special person on earth. The constant texts, the extravagant compliments, the whirlwind romance that seemed like a fairy tale. It was never real. This is called love bombing, and it's one of the narcissist's most effective manipulation tactics. But here's what most people don't understand. Narcissists aren't consciously plotting this. They genuinely believe in what they're doing in the moment. Psychologist Joseph Burgo explains that when narcissists meet a new potential source of supply, they experience something called idealization. They project perfection onto you. In their mind, you are perfect, the answer to all their problems, the source that will finally fill their void. And they pursue this fantasy with obsessive intensity. You felt special because they were treating you like you were their salvation. But you weren't falling in love with who they really are. You were falling in love with who they pretended to be. Fake perfect fantasy illusion. Studies by psychologist W. Keith Campbell found that narcissists are highly skilled at creating positive first impressions. They're charming, confident, and exciting. But these same studies showed that the positive impression rapidly deteriorates over time as the true personality emerges. The love bombing phase isn't love, it's recruitment. They are securing supply. And once they have you hooked, something terrifying happens. Devaluation cycle. The shift happens gradually at first. Small criticisms, subtle put-downs disguised as jokes, a coldness that wasn't there before. Then suddenly the person who worshipped you treats you like you're worthless. What happened? You fell off the pedestal. Not because you did anything wrong, but because reality can never match the fantasy they projected onto you. When narcissists idealize someone, they're not seeing the real person. They're seeing a projection of perfection. Eventually, the real you starts showing through with normal human flaws, needs, and limitations. And narcissists cannot tolerate imperfection in their supply source. For the narcissist, the shift from idealization to devaluation is inevitable. Psychologist Dr. Ramani Durvasula has documented this pattern extensively. The idealization phase is followed by devaluation, where everything you once did right is now wrong. Your independence that attracted them becomes selfishness. Your confidence becomes arrogance. Your need for connection becomes neediness. From royalty to trash. This isn't about you. This is their internal programming playing out. The same pattern has happened with everyone before you, and it will happen with everyone after you. But the truly disturbing part is what's missing from their brain when this happens. The empathy deficit. Love requires empathy, the ability to feel what another person feels, to understand their joy, their pain, their needs. Neuroscience has revealed something chilling about narcissistic brains. Studies using functional MRI scans found that narcissists have significantly reduced gray matter in areas associated with empathy, specifically the anterior insula and the parts of the prefrontal cortex involved in emotional processing. This isn't a choice. It's a structural difference. When you were crying, pouring your heart out, hoping they would finally understand, their brain literally wasn't processing your emotions the way a normal brain would. Researcher Darsha Narvi's found that early childhood experiences physically shape the brain's capacity for empathy. When children don't receive nurturing care, the neural pathways for empathy don't develop properly. Broken brain, no empathy. But here's what makes it even more confusing. Narcissists can fake empathy. They learn the correct responses. They know what to say. But they're performing empathy like an actor performs emotion, technically correct but internally hollow. This is why they sometimes seem so understanding, so compassionate. They were mimicking what they'd learned empathy should look like. But when you needed real emotional support, when the performance wasn't convenient anymore, they had nothing to give. And this leads us to a defense mechanism that prevents them from ever truly connecting. Armor of shame. At the core of every narcissist is a secret they'll never admit, even to themselves. They believe they are worthless. This sounds paradoxical. How can someone who acts so superior feel worthless? Psychologist Brené Brown's research on shame provides the answer. There's a difference between healthy shame, which says I did something bad, and toxic shame, which says I am bad. Narcissists are drowning in toxic shame. Their grandiosity, their arrogance, their constant need for admiration, it's all armor. Armor protecting them from feeling the unbearable shame that lives at their core. Shame is the swampland of the soul. Narcissism is the refusal to wade in. Love requires vulnerability. It requires letting someone see who you really are, including the parts you're not proud of. But if letting someone see the real you means experiencing that crushing shame, the narcissist's psyche refuses. Their defense mechanisms kick in automatically. The walls go up. The armor strengthens. They will destroy the relationship before they let anyone get close enough to trigger that shame. Shame hidden armor walls. You thought you were fighting for the relationship. They were fighting against intimacy itself. But there's another psychological pattern that makes love impossible for them. Object relations. In healthy psychological development, children learn something crucial. Other people are separate individuals with their own thoughts, feelings, and needs. Psychoanalysts call this object constancy, the ability to maintain a stable, positive image of someone even when they are not present or when they disappoint you. Narcissists never fully develop this. In their minds, you're not a separate person. You're an extension of them, an object that exists to serve their needs, from person to pawn. Psychologist Otto Kernberg's work on object relations theory shows that narcissists relate to others as part objects rather than whole people. They split people into all good or all bad. You're either with them or against them, perfect or worthless. When you meet their needs, you're idealized. When you don't, you're instantly devalued. There's no middle ground, no nuance, no understanding that you're a complex human with your own experience. This is why their love felt so conditional, because it was never about you as a person. It was about you as a function. Object function tool extension. You were a tool for their emotional regulation, a mirror for their grandiosity, a source for their supply, but never a separate person worthy of love for who you actually are. And this leads us to something even more troubling about what happens inside them. Emotional age frozen. Imagine a toddler throwing a tantrum because they didn't get what they want. Now imagine that toddler in an adult body with adult intelligence and adult language skills. Stunted. This is the emotional reality of narcissism. Psychologists like James Masterson and Alice Miller have documented how narcissistic personality disorder typically develops when emotional development gets arrested in early childhood, usually between ages 2 and 4. This is the age when children are naturally egocentric. They believe the world revolves around them. They have difficulty understanding others' perspectives. They need constant validation and react dramatically to criticism. Most children grow out of this as their brains develop and their environment provides healthy challenges and support. But for narcissists, something interrupted this development. Trauma, neglect, enmeshment with a narcissistic parent. The psychological growth stopped. Behind every narcissist is a wounded child who never developed a stable sense of self. Their bodies grew up. Their intellect developed. They learned to navigate the adult world. But emotionally, they're still that toddler, desperately seeking the validation they never received, unable to tolerate frustration, incapable of genuine reciprocity. You weren't in a relationship with an adult. You were in a relationship with a wounded child wearing an adult mask. And this brings us to why they sabotage every relationship they are in. Intimacy terror. Here's the cruel paradox of narcissism. They desperately need people. They cannot survive without narcissistic supply, but they are terrified of actual closeness. Intimacy equals annihilation. To understand this, you need to understand what intimacy requires. Being truly seen, showing your authentic self, accepting that someone knows your weaknesses, your fears, your flaws. For someone whose entire psychological structure is built on hiding those things, intimacy feels like death. Psychoanalyst James Masterson identified what he called the abandonment depression at the core of narcissism, an overwhelming fear that if anyone sees the real them, they'll be rejected and abandoned. So they push you away before you can leave. They create chaos in peaceful moments. They start fights when you're getting too close. Fear closeness push away. Every time you felt the relationship was deepening, did something mysteriously go wrong? That wasn't coincidence. That was their defense mechanism activating. They were protecting themselves from the very thing they claimed to want. This is why narcissistic relationships follow a predictable pattern. Pursue, capture, devalue, discard. The cycle repeats because intimacy can never be allowed to develop. And finally, there's the most devastating truth about what this means for you. You can't fix them. If you've loved a narcissist, you probably believed you could fix them, that your love would be enough, that if you just tried harder, were more patient, gave more of yourself, they would finally love you back. You cannot fix them. This is the hardest truth to accept. You cannot love someone into health. You cannot fill a void that was created decades before you met them. You cannot provide enough supply to satisfy an emptiness that has no bottom. Research on narcissistic personality disorder shows that change is extremely rare, and when it happens, it requires years of intensive therapy, which most narcissists refuse because admitting they need help threatens their grandiose self-image. Studies suggest that only about 2–4% of narcissists ever achieve meaningful change. You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. The love you gave was real. It was beautiful. It was valuable. But it was given to someone who lacked the capacity to receive it. The cruel irony of loving a narcissist is that your love becomes their supply, fuel for their ego, rather than connection between two souls. Heartbreak to freedom. The only path forward is accepting what they cannot give you, grieving the relationship you thought you had, and redirecting that love towards someone capable of receiving it, including yourself. Understanding why narcissists can't love doesn't excuse their behavior. It doesn't erase the pain they caused, but it does something crucial. It removes the blame from you. Not your fault never was. You weren't unlovable. You weren't too much or not enough. You were trying to get water from an empty well. The emptiness at their core, the arrested development, the terror of intimacy, the inability to see you as a real person, these existed long before you met them and will continue long after you're gone. Your only responsibility now is your own healing, recognizing the patterns so you never repeat them, learning what genuine love actually looks like so you can identify it and accept nothing less. As the philosopher Erich Fromm wrote, love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence. But that love must begin with yourself. The narcissist taught you through pain what love is not. Now use that knowledge to find what love actually is. Welcome to the Psyche Project. If this opened your eyes, subscribe for more. Share it with someone who needs to hear it.